We get it. You're busy. You want to grow, and we want to help. You're passionate about your craft because it deeply matters to you. Your faith is important. It's your foundation. At Stay Forth, we coach leaders to avoid burnout, live and lead with clarity, purpose, and from a place of health. We want you to experience long-term impact. Welcome to the journey. Well, friends, welcome back to another episode. I promised you during this AntiBurnout series, a couple of surprises, and we got one of those today. And here we are with Chad Lunsford, one of our coaches and a friend of mine, somebody I actually had the opportunity to coach several years ago, and just an overall stud. Chad, welcome to the podcast, man.
I always love being on this podcast with you, Alan. And I had the privilege of being a client of yours from leadership coaching, walking me through a really important season of transition in my life, went through sabbatical coaching, and then now I have the privilege to coach alongside of you. And having been in ministry now for over 20 years, I don't like to actually put the final year on that. I just say over 20 years. It makes me
decades.
That's right. 2 decades of leading in ministry. And so, man, so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, it really is amazing to watch full circle of just meeting you at a gathering and then beginning leadership coaching. That led to sabbatical coaching. And now you started as a sabbatical coach and now you're doing leadership coaching as well. So it's really fun to watch. You never assume that that's going to be the process. But man, it's been really cool, Chad, to watch you continue to pastor, but also to expand some of the other ways that you're influencing people. You speak in other places. Your book is just a few weeks away, Made for More. And guys, if you didn't catch Chad on the podcast, we had it a couple weeks ago. First interview there on the book. We wanted to get it when it was in pre-order phase, but so excited for you and the influence that you have. And we're going to have some fun today, kind of flipping the mic around. And so you're actually going to interview me here in a little bit. But before we do, I know that these shifts you actually kind of massage into leaders during the coaching process, but you had these kind of shaping and forming you in the process. What was that like to experience these shifts actually as a coaching client?
Yeah, I'm really excited to jump into part 3 of the book and part 3 of this anti-burnout series here on the podcast, because this shift, right, that we can make to really lighten the load as we lead, it's been a game changer for me. I've lived out part 3. I'm not saying I've arrived, I've got it all figured out, but these principles that you and I were able to work through together, again, a very pivotal time in my life and leadership, and they've been a game changer for me. So that, so much so that when I came out of sabbatical, what I've noticed, and I've noticed in so many of our clients, they've said something similar to this, effect there. Once they came out of sabbatical, they came into what we call the reorientation phase, and they're really finding some new rhythms of life and leadership. What I found and what we see in so many of our clients is they'll say, now I find myself having greater impact and somehow putting in less output. And it's what I see week in and week out with myself. I see with so many of our clients that they're making this shift, and they're sort of just sort of changing their look on how they're leading, and it's changing everything. They're getting more done. They're seeing more impact with the people they lead. They're seeing greater results and successes, and somehow the output is very, very different. And so when you say that this is a shift to lighten the load, or that we can live and lead in a lighter way, it's true. And I've seen it, and I'm so excited that we get to share it with others.
Yeah, it feels impossible in many ways, and it almost feels wrong sometimes. And I think we've grown up with this idea that, man, if you're going to do something, that it's going to have to be really hard. And I think that holds us back. Now, leading is hard. Don't get me wrong. Leading is complex. Don't hear what I'm not saying here. But often we make the thing harder than it needs to be. And when we learn this lighter way to lead, what we say as mountain guides for your leadership journey, we can't not allow you to climb the mountain, right? Like, we can't put you on our shoulders. We can't put you in a helicopter and then go, cool, we're going to put you on the summit of your life. Of course not. But we can journey with you. We actually can take some of the things out of your pack. And when I'm climbing a mountain and there's not much in my pack versus when there's a ton in my pack, like that's a completely different experience. But it's still hard and it's still challenging. And that's one of the things that I love with leaders. And I think it's cool that you got to experience these first as a coach and then now getting to kind of bring that freedom to other people to be able to experience that. And it is fun how sabbatical coaching and leadership coaching really play off of each other. Later in the book, I actually talk about addition to multiplication. And I say, stop adding value and start multiplying it. And that's really connected to these shifts. And just kind of before we get into it, where are we in the book? This is a pivotal, like a hinge moment to the book where I start at a really high level. We have a burnout problem. And it is cultural, it is widespread, and it is dangerous. Moving into obstacles and opportunities, and Jonathan and I talked about that on the last podcast, that we're going to have to see the obstacle as the opportunity as a leader. We're going on a bear hunt, can't go over it, can't go under it, you got to go through it. This is a beautiful part of the book, and I think a very hopeful part of the book, because it like swings the door open to allow us to kind of peer down the hallway and see there's more behind this door. And the shifts, if we're able to make them, and I've watched so many leaders do it, I have stories of leaders making them in the book, some beautiful things await. And you are talking about some of those things. So it brings me a lot of joy to think about those shifts that you were able to make and how you are here right now, post sabbatical on the other side of this with your book and coaching and all kinds of other things. So pretty cool to think about.
Well, I'm excited that I get to flip the script on you today and ask you some questions about part 3. And we're going to go through the 7 shifts that you guide us through, you coach us through in the book. And each of these, quite honestly, are very personal for me because you walk me through them, and I've been putting them into my life. Now, I'm able to walk some of our clients through these shifts as well. And we start off with the first shift. Really goes from reactive to proactive. And it's been very personal for me. And I think it's probably one of those linchpin shifts that we could make that really change everything else. And you start off this chapter talking about a charismatic leader. And I think there's a lot of leaders out there can probably resonate with this, right? There's something in their life, whether it's their personality, which is probably for a lot of leaders, or something that they're just distinguishedly good at, right? And they lean on that. But what you talked about in the book is how this leader kind of got into some unhealthy cycles. And they were just like, I don't know how to get out of this. And I think a lot of leaders feel that. They just kind of get into this reactive mode and this reactive mindset. And I love you talked about all these things that happen when we get into this reactive mindset. And what I was seeing you say was it really limits our vision. Like we kind of get stuck looking down versus kind of having this windshield look on life. And in doing so, it really limits our capacity, it limits our impact, and yet we're working really, really hard. And again, it's personal for me because I saw it. I was in a season where I was putting in 60 plus hours a week. I was getting up at 4:30 a.m. just to get everything done that I wanted to accomplish. And in the process of us working together, I was able to really find some priorities. And I love what you say here, and I want to flip it to you, Alan. You say we cannot design our lives when we are reacting to them. And I think that's incredibly important for so many leaders to hear, right? We want to design our lives. What is it that we want to do? What's the kind of impact we want to make? But when we're constantly living reactive and our eyes are down, we can't see it. So I'd love for you, what is it that you're trying to help us and help so many leaders see when you talk about this incredibly important shift that we're going to make from reactive to proactive?
You're right, man. It really is foundational. And there's a reason that this one comes first, because we actually have to change the way that we view life. And when I see a reactive leader, and I've been there before, so you'll read that plenty of failure stories here in the book, but I would say I lived at least my 20s, part of my early 30s on defense. And I was getting lived by my life. I wasn't living my life. And when we are literally able to flip this and go, okay, what is the life that I am designed to live? I actually sat with a group of leaders the other day, and there was kind of quiet music playing. And there was a series of really hard questions we we're going to ask about our lives and our families and our business and what is the good life. And so The late, great Stephen R. Covey, who wrote Seven Habits. This is really his language, and it's such beautiful language because proactively, how are you literally bringing life into your schedule and to other people along the way? It's not going to happen on accident. And if we live on accident, we have the leadership treadmill or the life treadmill, where the only thing, like you say, is to get up earlier, punch it harder, and just keep going faster and faster. And we ask, why? Why am I doing this? And eventually, something is going to have a train wreck in our lives. And maybe it's just that we quit or we step off of it, we jump off of the treadmill. But I'm tired of watching leaders have their lives lived for them. I'm not talking about not having a full life. I'm not talking about there's several meetings that I have and coaching sessions that I have today. I'm not talking about living it in an easy way where we're not challenging ourselves or doing meaningful work. Of course not. But literally saying, here is the life I'm designed to live. And then how do I schedule my quarter for that, my year for that? But how do I schedule my Tuesday for that? How do I schedule my Thursday for that? How do I schedule in Sabbath to say, man, I'm going to run pretty hard this week, but we've got this beautiful day on Saturday coming. If it's chilly, I'll tell you, I'll be the next to the wood stove in my sweatpants. I already know we have a day blocked off, and I often start from that space of Sabbath and then work back. And that for me is a great way to do it. Of course, tip the hat right here to Right Side Up Journal. We've designed it so you can literally live your weeks on purpose proactively and your days on purpose proactively. And that's how Jonathan and I have designed the Right Side Up Journal.
Al, when I hear you saying reactive to proactive, since I've experienced it, gotten these tools to help our clients and stay forward, what I hear, what I see is freedom to step into who our clients are, freedom from getting off of that treadmill. I mean, I think so many leaders at some point in our lives, if not in the totality of our lives, we feel that treadmill. Like, I can't get off of this. There's people are jumping on my schedule. The tasks keep coming. I've got to make money. I've got to take care of my household, whatever, right? And it just feels like it's piling up. What is it in this proactive shift that helps leaders find freedom?
Yeah, it's actually paradoxical freedom, because it feels like if you're planning ahead that you're actually locking yourself in, you're boxing yourself in, and there are times I felt claustrophobic inside of my own schedule, and that is not a good feeling. Like, again, when you're getting lived by your life, it's like got this chain around you, and then you just wake up and you're like, oh, whatever meetings I have this day, versus being able to prepare for those. And I pray for every single coaching client ahead of time, and I think about this and what do they need today. It's just a different mindset within that. Absolutely, there's freedom. Let me give you an example. I had space in my schedule, and I have very firm boundaries in this season, especially around the book and being on podcasts and those kind of things. And I generally have to say no to people in town who are coaches who just kind of want to get to know me a little bit. And this guy just said, hey, can I buy you Chick-fil-A and just sit down with you for a while? And because I planned well and boundaried well, Chad, I looked at it and I was like, man, I talked to somebody else and they said, man, this is an awesome guy. You should totally get to know him. And I was like, great. I have an hour space in there. Let's do it. And that's the freedom that I didn't used to have. The end of the day today, I'll actually go home early, and it's, well, do I want to go to the gym? Or actually, it's a nice day. Maybe I'll go out for a hike. That's what I have more and more of in my life, even though we do a lot of work here at Stay Forth. So that to me is the freedom in the everyday, but it's also the freedom to look out long term and go, what's next? And too many leaders are boxed in and don't have any space, even 2 or 3 or 4 hours extra in their schedule each week to do the things that they're designed to do, whether it is work, whether it's family, whether it's volunteering in the community, whether it's more time outside in the outdoors and hobbies and things like that. So that's actually where we start if we want to move toward even better habits and practices. We don't even have space in our life until we move from reactive to proactive.
Yeah, that first shift it's so foundational to everything else that we do. It's why it's been so personal for me. Another shift that you talk about in the book that's was really personal for me, and it's one of the first shifts I try to help our clients make. And it's this: you say from time management to energy investment. And if you've been leading for 2 to 3 years, you no doubt are trying to think about, how do I get more bang for my buck with my time? And there's no shortage of books out there, right, that want to tell you how you should be managing your time. But I love how we talk about from time management to energy investment. In fact, in the book, you say the currency of leadership is energy. The currency of leadership is energy. What a powerful statement. Again, I've seen this one be so powerful in my life, where instead of just putting things on my calendar, I'm actually thinking through what are the most important things that I can be investing my week with. Part of that's going to have to be energy fills for myself, because if I'm filled up, I'm a better leader for everybody else around me. And that's usually what gets put on the back burner. But even beyond that, when I'm thinking through my priorities, I'm really thinking through, if I put my energy here, this is actually going to multiply my investment in my people and in my products. Everything that I'm working on is getting better. So talk to us about this incredibly important shift that, again, has been a game changer for me.
We have to realize that energy is greater than time. And so, again, another foundational one here, 5 minutes of looking into our kids' eyes is way more valuable than 5 hours of sitting in the room but scrolling or being on screens. 5 hours of diving in and getting clarity on launching a new product or process could be way more powerful and actually create more impact and income than 5 months or even 5 years of just continuing to coast and do the same thing. When I am, looking into whether it's the relationships in my life, whether my wife and I are getting time to connect and have conversation, sometimes it's that 10 minutes at the end of the day to truly debrief. How was your day? And what was disappointing? What was hard? What was good about that? So it works relationally. It also works with tasks. We don't do very well multitasking. I've done so much of the research on this. The idea is just dive in, even if it's for a 20-minute chunk. You are going to create better content than you could if you were just not having any time to think about it for a few weeks. And so energy today, everybody is fighting for our attention and our energy. And whenever I say this in a group of leaders, whether I'm leading a working genius training with a business team, or whether I'm one-on-one with a leader, or I'm in a group of leaders, I talk about energy and they're like, oh, it just helps to flip that around and realize you can chuck time at stuff all day long, especially if it's draining to you. And you realize, man, I actually got a negative output on that. But if you invest the best energy in that area, like you say, it multiplies it in other ways. For me, working out is one of those. Getting out into creation is one of those. And even to use that working out example, I don't like it, but I understand the value of it. And if I can block off about 45 minutes there, I listen to a podcast or I'm in silence, I'm thinking about new things. I always get new ideas. And there's this principle in the book, movement creates energy. Movement creates energy. And so we're all sort of looking for more energy. And you think about, whether it's people pounding caffeine, or whether it's waking up early, or cold showers, or cold plunges, or like it's crazy to me how we're doing anything possible to get more energy. And sure, do the best you can, optimize your body and your mind. But the reality is, when we are investing our energy in the places that truly matter to us and to others, there's this multiplicative return. When I'm with people and I am in the right environment, it is a huge multiplier. And so just, I think so much of this is a call back to self-awareness to say, what brings you energy and what's the best way for you to invest that in other people? And for me, connecting other people is a huge call. I would even dare say vocation in my life, to connect the right people together so that we can see greater impact. Whenever I make a connection of two people and then get out of the way, for me, that is a huge use of my time. That text intro, Chad, could have taken 5 minutes and could release something. And I've done that with you before. Could literally introduce somebody to the next phase or stage of their life that gives me tons of energy. And that's a multiplier for me and for them. And so this section is really an invitation to think back at what are those multipliers for you. And then how do you not just chuck 20 hours a week at all those, or even 4 or 2 hours a week, but how do you make space for those each day, in moments and in hours? And you will see a return from those.
I want to spend just a moment longer on this shift before we go to the next one. This time management, from time management to energy investment. And in it, you talk a little bit about the 6 types of working genius. And I think the power in that, if people aren't familiar with it, there's 6 types of working genius, and now in your
And they're one of our sponsors here on the podcast. We have a series coming up on Working Genius. I love it. Love it.
Perfect. Didn't even know that. So here we go. That's great. Part of what they allow people to do is to have permission to be great at how they are naturally wired, and to invest their energy there, and to bring the best of themselves in that area of one of those 6 types to their organization and in their lives. And I think that's what you're saying in this chapter, right? Is permission to lean into how you're wired, what fills you up. Because if you understand those things and lean into them, everybody else around you gets better.
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. And people ask all the time, how do I get more fills in my life and less of the drains? And here I am a fan of evolution, not revolution. I don't think it's fair to your employee or your employer generally, often not to your team, to make a sudden switch. Now, there are exceptions, like after a sabbatical could be a great time to do that. When there's a job change, a role change, something like that. But I encourage people like gas and clutch to slowly let down on the drains and to pick up the fills by percentages. If each week you could pick up 2% more of the things that you enjoy doing, and bring you life and bring other people life. Like for me, connecting. There was a time where connecting people was not in my schedule at all. And so I kind of didn't get to it. And then I remember I was sitting in a Starbucks and a guy walked in and he said to me, "Man, I love meeting with you. But really what I love is connecting to the right people through you. Whenever I want to know somebody, Alan, I go to you. You are a connector." Those words changed my life, because then I had to steward that and say, what does that mean? I learned from a few other connectors. There's not a ton out there that I've met. But I literally had to go, man, this is a way I can add inordinate impact to the people around me. And I began to actually schedule time for that. And so there were some things like random meetings with people all throughout town. I was driving around town. It just wasn't a good use of my time. And I spend more time connecting. I've actually honed that down. And there's a certain amount of connections I'm hoping to create in my city and then nationally this year. And I love getting those spaces where I can connect the right people. So that would be one of those examples. I love the Working Genius. Again, you're going to hear from them here because you identify in green, here are the areas I need to leverage. And in red, here are the areas I need to be careful that I don't invest too much of my energy into. Most times, Chad, we are living reactive. And so these are connected because we're actually not thinking about those things. When we're getting lived by our life and we're being reactive, we actually can't be proactive to invest in those areas, because mostly these areas are going to be important and never urgent. And if you do not live ahead, proactive, looking at these areas to invest, you're actually going to go, why am I so drained? Because life will take from us and our schedule will take from us. Maybe our friend groups or acquaintances or social media will take from us whatever we have if we are not resisting.
Yeah, that's a great transition, I think, to another shift that you talk about in the book. Because what I hear you saying is you had great clarity on your unique design, which gave you permission to step into it. So another shift you talk about is from confusion to clarity. And I know in the church world, there's an old saying, if there's mist in the pulpit, there's fog in the pews. In other words, if the guy speaking isn't entirely sure what he's talking about, nobody knows what he's talking about. And I think that's what you're getting after in this chapter, is that leaders must have clarity. Can you tell us more about this?
We've got this equation that we use that's just a simple, there's a diagram here in this chapter of a pulley. And we talk about when clarity goes up, overwhelm goes down. They have an inverse relationship. They're tied together. And that is essentially, Chad, what we get to do during coaching. During a coaching session, sometimes 90 minutes, sometimes the first 30 minutes, when we can clarify what's going on and we can name things, and I walk through a process actually here in this section, when we can name things, we don't have to solve everything. And we actually feel relief because the clarity is going up and the overwhelm's going down. And people will walk in. You've seen it. I've seen it a lot. People walk into a coaching session. You could just see it. They're just spun up. They're overwhelmed. We've all been there. It's a terrible feeling. But when we can fight for that clarity, you fight for 5% clarity, that's actually a 10% gain. And the feeling is generally relief of like, okay, I can do this. And there are few feelings worse on this earth than being stuck, feeling claustrophobic, like I was talking about within your life, but actually to go, you know what, we have agency. Like God has created us as co-designers in our own life that we can actually fight for clarity. What's going on here? And Chad, sometimes I fight for clarity and I'm like, oh yeah, I just need to say no to this thing. It's an easy decision. Other times I fight for clarity and I go, oh, there is a deep shift and there's a lot of change. There's something I need to grieve that's going to be incredibly painful. But you know what? I'd rather know than not know. And there's this relief, even if it's hard, once we have defined reality, then we can move on. Jim Collins talks about this, and several organizational leaders talk about this idea that the first job of a leader is to define reality. And when we can define reality, this is good, this is hard. Maybe it's, hey, this is going to be a really hard year for our company or for our organization, but we're going to push through it. Here are the changes we make. And that is what leaders do, is we help define reality for us and for others. Then we move forward into clarity. And naturally, when we have action, then some of that overwhelm just melts away. Take your next right steps. First, we have to have clarity. We call it awareness. Second, then we can take courage. We also call that action. And what you and I are trying to do as coaches is move people toward the right action in their life. We clarified, then we've had courage, we have awareness, then we can take action. And I'm telling you, we were not meant to sit and wait and huddle underneath, whether it is our blanket or the past or something that brings us comfort, and just sit here all day. We were actually meant to act upon life and to move, and something unlocks when we find enough clarity, and then we take a step, and then we can keep taking our next right steps. I see it each week, and it is kind of a minor miracle when we get to see this.
Yeah, I loved in this chapter how you talked about how clarity brings confidence, and you shared a story of how you were walking into a consulting or speaking opportunity, and you were so tied up in knots because you were focused on yourself. I think every leader can relate to this, but when you made the shift to say, I'm not here for me, I'm here to serve others, that was just a clarifying thought that brought confidence of, oh, I've got something to bring to this group. And I know I've had so many people over the years, ask me, like, how are you able to get in front of thousands of people and speak clearly and confidently? And it's like, that is the key. If I'm focused on myself, man, it's paralyzing and it's confusing and it's overwhelming. But when I can make the shift to say, as a leader, I'm not here for me, I'm here to serve others. And I've got something I want to share with them to help them. It's not about me. And I get out of the way and I'm really able to help them. Overwhelm goes down, clarity goes up of why I'm there.
In this section, we give some actual very practical ways to move. And that's probably one of the biggest that we're dealing with in our culture right now is it is overwhelmed. We are overwhelmed with information and we are hungry for encounters and experiences. And I would say we're hungry for the right challenge as well. But in the midst of overwhelm, we're actually going to lean out of that challenge that we need to take on instead of to push forward inside it. So I just have a huge heart. If you're feeling that level of overwhelm, friend, first of all, you need to pick up this book because it is the cheapest, fastest way we know of to deliver a coaching experience. Secondly, you may consider coaching because that's sometimes you're overwhelmed with success or with opportunities. You can be overwhelmed with great things in your life, or you could be overwhelmed by a sense that you are not making a difference in life. And so overwhelm does not discriminate, unfortunately.
Well, again, a great transition to this next shift, which is from triage to priorities. And I love it. In the book, you talk about, in triage mode, we're thinking about survival, not priorities. We're busy, but not very effective. Again, all leaders can relate to this. We've had seasons where we're doing a lot of stuff, but we're like, are we really being effective? And you even point out the fact that mindset is contagious to our teams, that everybody's kind of running around and we don't even necessarily notice it. And sometimes as a coach or as a consultant, we get to come in and we can walk into a space and we're like, why is everybody so busy? Why is everybody moving so fast? But they don't see it because they're kind of caught up in it. And I love here at the end of the chapter, I want you to speak into this, Alan, because I think it's going to bring freedom to so many people. You say, kind of in your own context, as you're sort of getting to the end of your day, you say, I take a deep breath, close my laptop, and hop in my car to go meet my precious daughter. And how many times do leaders answer one more email, do one more thing, and eventually we hop in the car. Eventually we go do that, that thing that's actually more important to us. It's why we're here, but we're never doing it with peace. And I love it. I take a deep breath. I close the laptop. I've done my work for the day. Now I'm going to get on to the things that are really important to me. Talk to us about that. How do we make that shift from triage to priorities?
First of all, we have to realize that we live in back to the reactive word again, a reactive culture that is living last minute, is living overwhelmed. And frankly, we're living sloppy. And I had to come to terms with the fact that it is not okay the way that I'm living, sloppy living. And for me, it looks like walking down a hallway before a meeting and I've got 3 or 4 texts. I may open up my email on my phone and my mind is racing. I'm not present with people there. I'm walking into the meeting going, what exactly are we going to accomplish here? And we are living so last minute. That's not helpful. That's actually not dignifying for somebody's time to go, why are we here again for this meeting? And it goes back, I think, to elimination first, is to say, what do I need to eliminate from my life? And it could be, I eliminate the pressure. This is one of the things I've done. I've eliminated the pressure that every single day I have to get to my email. And you may go like, whoa, that's like heresy around work these days. But the reality is that somebody else's random email is not my problem right now. Somebody else's last minute planning that needs something and has an seeming emergency in their life is usually not an emergency, and it's usually not my problem. Now, it doesn't mean I can't help them within that, but right now we're present. We're recording a podcast. I'm connecting with you guys. Actually, it doesn't matter what the other things are that are in my life. And so if we live open to emergency mode all the time, emergencies tend to find us. And I walk through this exercise with leaders like, well, what if someone has an emergency, or what about this? What about that? And it's like, my wife knows where I am. And we've had an emergency literally 2 times in my family over the course of years. And she called twice during a coaching session, and I knew to pick up. It's pretty, it's pretty simple overall. So, man, there's so much that I could talk through here, but the word you say is freedom. And that is so true, is that when we move from, I have to solve everybody else's problems, to, you know what, I've written down for the day what I need to accomplish today. And it's a fairly small list of things, and then I'll get to the next thing the next day. And so on my best days, Chad, I'm closing my laptop going, the emails can wait, but I want my daughter to see my face right when she walks in the house from school. And that's actually more important than what I was able to accomplish today at work. And, so for me, it really comes down to that. I think every leader, there's a moment in your life where you are tempted to compromise. And just literally the way that we are living our lives is so out of control. The fact that we would go to the urinal or we would step into a stall in the bathroom, and that is our only break to text people or to email people. I know you've done it. Don't act like you haven't. Like something is off, that we cannot even go to the bathroom to be able to have just a minute of silence, 5 minutes of silence, without thinking we have to accomplish something. Our brains are spinning, and unfortunately, we're not adding much value or presence to the people around us, and it's a shame.
Well, I know these shifts are adding so much value to so many leaders. We've got 3 more shifts that I want us to touch on, so I'm going to keep us rolling here. And they, like you said, they all connect. And again, I think this next one is critical for leaders. As leaders, so often we're making so many decisions that we have to at times rely on our intuition, right? We have to rely on our training, our experience. And at the same time, how many times have we gotten into a space, a situation, a problem, simply because we were fully leaning into and leading on our intuition? But if we had been intentional, we wouldn't have found ourselves in this mess in the first place if we had just backed up, slowed down, and been intentional. And so this next shift is from intuitive to intentional. Talk to us about why this is important and how we begin to make this shift.
Most entrepreneurs, and I would argue most leaders, have an incredible gut for making decisions. Why'd you do it? Oh, I just knew. I just knew that I should. We are able to read the room. The entrepreneurial mind, you can see a problem and then you can create solutions in that. And here's the problem. It works until it doesn't. It works really, really well for a while when the organization is small or it's just as big as ourselves or whatever that is. That first moment, that first season, maybe even 10 years, and then it stops working. We lead at a different level, and it requires us leading through people. And really, if you think about leadership, it is making wise decisions and it is leading through people in greater ways than I could accomplish. And so that is this disorienting shift when you move into this different role and realize so much of this is actually connected to another shift, moving from a doer to a developer. Well, if we are going to move from doing the thing as an individual contributor to a developer, we're developing teams and other people who we're equipping to do these things. We're actually going to have an intentional process to do so. This is why I believe in tools. Anybody who has been through coaching with you or me has seen tools and frameworks. Immediately they calm the brain down. And you can see how all these shifts are connected. From intuitive thinking, just figure out your sabbatical or just figure out your next step, to intentional. We've got a process for you in this tool that you can actually work, you can write down, you calm down, and you move from reactive here to proactive. The overwhelm actually flips into clarity. And so when these are all connected, it's like a wheel where these things actually get you to the next thing and you begin to spin going, I've done this before. So again, this is really connected to some of the other shifts. But I would just say, especially visually, if you can write it down, you can even put it on a napkin, you can make it simple and it passes the napkin test, then you can train your team to be able to do this. And every time I bring on a new coach or every time I train somebody to do something that is fairly natural to me, it is actually slower until it's not and it's faster. Chad, I remember training you to become a coach and you had already gone through the process yourself, and training you took some energy on both of our sides. And then it didn't take much at all because you actually know that and are working within it. And now we actually don't have to invest that much time in it. So I just want to encourage you, leader, it takes a lot at first, and that's an investment. But every investment is based on delayed gratification and comes back later to you in spades. And to leaders, that is a multiplicative impact. If you're a catalyst, then other people are going to feel that cascading effect downhill. And you're going to go, I'm so glad I invested that time back when I did.
Well, that leads us right into our sixth of 7 shifts. And you referenced it just a moment ago, and it's from being a doer to a developer. And again, leaders usually are getting into the seats they're in because they're great doers. And yet, often what gets you here isn't what's going to get you there. It's not going to take you to the future. Talk to us for a second. Why is it so important to make that shift from a doer to a developer? And kind of give us some tips on like how we begin to do that, from, doing everything ourselves to trusting and developing the people around us. Why is it important, and how do we begin to make that shift?
There's a practical thing here, and then there's something that I think is deeply spiritual, actually built into the fabric of who we are. And I'll just start with the practical. We can only raise our capacity so much ourselves. We can only do so much. Our schedules are often locked, and we can only take on, for example, so many coaching clients or so many speaking gigs or so many opportunities here, whatever your zone is of impact. But if you train other people to be able to take on even 10% more, if you have a team of people, and let's say you have 4 people you're leading, they can take on 10% more in terms of what they're doing. They grow into that impact. Then the team sees a 40% gain. At this point in your leadership, you've been leading for over 2 decades in ministry, Chad. It's going to be hard for you to grow your capacity by 40%, especially within, let's say, a 6 or 8 month window. But it's realistic that you could grow your team by 10%. So multiplication always works out to be lighter than addition. Addition, let me just add more on my pack. And if we were to use the mountain climbing analogy, if 10 of us are carrying heavy meals up the mountain, it doesn't feel that heavy and it's worth carrying your stakes in or whatever. But if that were me carrying it on my back, then that would be crippling to me. And I would hate being out there, maybe not even get to where I'm going, up the summit or backpacking, to use that analogy. But that's the first side, is practical. The second side, I believe, is spiritual, is that I believe as God has wired it into us that the longer we are at this thing in life, the more fulfilling it is to raise other people up, whether it is our kids or other team members. And once we start to hit our 40s and certainly into our 50s, we start this generative phase, this phase moving from crystallized intelligence, fluid intelligence to crystallized intelligence. Arthur Brooks talks about this. David Brooks talks about the second mountain. This idea of so much of life is actually teaching other people to do the things. And there's this deep fulfillment and meaning that comes from it. So I think when you put the practicals of we have so many limits next to the meaning and fulfillment of that, those things come together to say, guys, the task of the leader is literally to teach other people to do things that are even greater than what we could do ourselves. And it requires a lot of humility, but I'll tell you, it is so fulfilling and it also works.
Yeah. And this principle creates so much energy for teams. And, we know so many leaders that they're overwhelmed. They're tired. Like, I'm just so busy. My schedule is so full. And at the same time, they have leaders underneath them that are begging for more opportunity, more investment. Hey, I'd love to be in that meeting at the same time. And so it creates so much energy for our teams when they're brought into the meeting, when they get one-on-one time with us and we tell them, hey, this is what I see in you. This is what I want to spend time with you on. It's energizing to them and it really raises their lid and the whole organization gets better in the process. I'd love to take us to our last shift here. 7 of 7. We've made it from efficient to effective, and efficiency is great. I love efficiency. It's one of the things I pride myself on, is making sure that I set up efficiency, and that's great. We need that, and we need some things to sort of run on autopilot in our lives as well. However, we've also got to check our metrics and should make sure that we're being effective with the things that we've set up in our lives. So talk to us about this final shift. Again, why is it important? How do we begin to live into it?
I kick off the chapter actually with a quote from talking about Stephen Covey, his son, who's an incredible author and speaker and thought leader, says, be efficient with things and effective with people. And my probably greatest mistakes in leadership come trying to be efficient with people and be efficient with my kids, and ultimately accidentally treating myself or other people like a machine, as opposed to how do we need space for this to breathe? And it's hard because leadership is about both tasks and people. And when we confuse those, we hurt people along the way, or we just lose the relational influence that we had. And so this is one of those that hits really close to me. I actually share a story, kind of an embarrassing story of me getting called out by a leader that recognized that they were just a cog in a wheel that day and in that season. And I had to step back and reevaluate, how have I accidentally treated people as machines? And so really efficiency, how do I do all the things? And we can get sucked into that mindset. And effectiveness is, how do I do a few of the right things well? And that's kind of the major call of this chapter. So I won't spoil anything else on that, but I just think that there's work for every single leader to do here. And this was the hardest, actually, of the 7 shifts for me, because I realized several failures along the way in this. And I'm really trying to restructure my schedule. That's why things like scheduling and the practicals matter. Because if I overbook it, I'm absolutely going to treat people like just one more task. And I don't want to do that. They don't deserve that. That's not dignifying. And frankly, that doesn't even get the best out of them and their capacity.
We've put so much change in people's pockets today. And it's because you, Alan, have done the hard work in this book, but specifically in part 3 of the book, of these shifts that we can make so we can live and lead in a much lighter way, and at the same time see our impact go up, both in our output in the world around us, but more specifically, like you're saying in this last shift, with the people that we get to lead, that we're really be effective with them and being mindful and fully present with them with our time. And I just want to encourage people. Again, I've got the book sitting right here, and bought it the day that it was available on Amazon, and it's so encouraging to me. And part of what I've loved as we've gotten into this anti-burnout series here on the podcast is this last little bit where you give us a little bit of the audiobook, which is you reading from the book. So I'm gonna toss it back to you, Alan.
So we got a clip for you as we end all 4 of these. And we want to bring you straight over to the audio clip. You can find that on Audible. And friends, just so you know, I didn't write a book so I could sell a ton of copies of this. If a lot of copies sell, then my hope is that the seeds land in the right places. They don't just sit on bookshelves, or people don't just order a bunch and hand them out and nobody reads them. Like I'm holding this book right here that's hard fought, because it's not 5 months of writing it or a year of writing a book. It's actually 5 years full time with leaders and 13 years overall. I've been coaching. 8 of those were part time, and right here, it's real stories it represents. It's real people, and I share those in here. It's principles, it's questions. We've put a leadership experience and a coaching experience into a book here that links with tools and those kind of things. And so, friends, I just don't know a better deal out there than a book that invites you into a coaching experience, because we're inviting you to change. We're not just giving you info. You got plenty of that. We actually need experiences and invitations to change. So I believe this section is going to be a hinge point. So that's all we've got for you here. But enjoy as I share some really specific pieces of this and walk you through some of the audiobook. We'll catch you on the next episode, which will be the last episode in our Anti-Burnout series.
From reactive to proactive. The drift is about passivity. Life planning is about proactivity. Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. Sam is one of the most gregarious people I've ever met. He has a way of turning strangers into buddies in a moment. I met him on a high mountain experience I was hosting and immediately connected with him. He got the invite to the mastermind experience after striking up a friendship while waiting for an Uber. That's just who Sam is. He was living his dream of running a ranch for people to decompress from the pressures of life and return with vigor. During our coaching relationship, I quickly learned he was reacting his life, not acting upon it. Behind his brilliant ideas and marketing mind was last-minute living. I visited their incredible ranch and saw this reactivity up close. We'd been working hard on naming and scheduling his priorities ahead of time so he could protect them, but new shiny things always came up. In fact, he attracted these new shiny things because he was so charismatic. He felt stuck in an unhealthy cycle. In the middle of our coaching journey, Sam was given a second ranch. Free. Nothing. Check paid. I knew this life-altering gift could position his nonprofit as a hub in his region, but it could also upend his health and his family. Sam did the hard work. He battled with his past struggles that were at the root of his dysfunction. He pulled a community around him, got serious about counseling, and was completely honest with me as his coach. He began turning new corners. He turned down distracting opportunities and prioritized his family in new ways. These ranches have become a hub for people to experience the simplicity and connection of a fire, an overnight stay, a group retreat, or live music on a beautiful night. He made the shift from reactive to proactive and is seeing the fruit every day. He's fighting for health as a dad, husband, and team leader. So many people I meet are on life's treadmill. It's that exhausting mode where you cram new things into your calendar and just keep punching the speed dial higher to maintain what you're doing. It feels like the only option is to run harder, but you're getting more and more tired. I've been there before. It's a terrible place to live. When we're in these seasons, or for some decades, we aren't living our life, we're getting lived by it. In this mode, our days and weeks plan us. We don't plan them. Our schedule drags us through the week. We regret committing to so many things, but it's all too overwhelming to cancel. We schedule later into the evening, skip another lunch, set the alarm an hour earlier, and convince ourselves we'll get to the gym next week. We pretend everything is fine and convince ourselves that we'll slow down soon. I believe some people move across the country just because it's the only way they know to jump off life's treadmill and start over. But here's the problem. Overwhelm is pre-burnout. In this mode, we're tired, task-driven, and bent toward bad decisions. Ironically, in our state of overwhelm, we're convinced we cannot afford time for rest and recovery, the very things we need to replenish. This is one path to the burnout spiral. We don't make wise decisions when we're living reactive for several reasons. We see only the problems, not our priorities. We're seeing only short-term fixes, not long-term investments. We're in a frenzied state. Our body and mind are on overdrive. We get tunnel vision, seeing only the task and looking past the people. We're trying to catch up, not get ahead. We miss things, get sloppy, and shed good habits. We suck others into the same frenzy of reactivity. We cannot design our lives when we are reacting to them. Sometimes we must react, but taking up residence in the land of reactivity will create chaos for us and those around us. We've all functioned here occasionally, but we cannot live in this fight or flight reality for long without neglecting priorities and hurting those we love, ourselves, or both. We must instead learn to live and lead proactively. In this mode, we zoom out, look ahead, and make intentional decisions. When we live and lead proactively, we have agency inside of our life. We can evaluate the opportunities and structure for health. Proactive living allows us to do the following: make decisions based on priorities, not problems. Slow down to examine the trade-offs and possibilities of saying yes. Be present with people, not just see a list of tasks. Get creative, working around obstacles without being defeated by them. Experience the momentum of being ahead. Add new things to life and work without toppling other things. Show up fully and bring our best. Work from rest, not just rest from work. Cultivate proactive, healthy culture around us. Proactivity allows a leader to play defense and offense, protecting their priorities while capitalizing on new opportunities. Proactive leaders know what matters to them and can evaluate anything new through that lens. This proactive mindset allows a leader to slow down, get the necessary information, examine the commitment, and decide whether it moves them toward or away from where they want to be. When we live and lead proactively, we offer that same posture as a gift to those around us. Reflect on this shift. In which areas of my life or leadership am I living reactively? How is that impacting me and others around me? What steps can I take to move toward proactivity? From time management to energy investment. Where you invest your love, you invest your life. Mumford & Sons. I love creating spaces where leaders can be themselves. No BS, no pretending, no need to impress. On one particular day, the table was filled with business owners. Every leader was feeling the end-of-year squeeze approaching. The assumption was, if we could just create more time, our stress would decrease and our impact would increase. While I was glad we'd cultivated a vulnerable space, I didn't agree with their assessment. They didn't need more time. They needed to shift their thinking. They actually needed more energy. So many tools in leadership focus on managing our time. This makes sense. Time is precious. We can do meaningful things with it, and it's easy to measure. We measure work weeks, meetings, and vacation in hours and days. But if we were somehow given all the time in the world, and we didn't know what it was for, it wouldn't help us. If you don't know the most important actions to focus on, you drift toward ineffectiveness and exhaustion. The currency of leadership is energy, not time. Physics describes the difference between potential energy and kinetic energy. Potential movement is very different from actual movement. It's more important for us to invest our energy wisely than to spend our time wisely. I know that may sound strange, but I promise you, it's a helpful shift that can help you bypass burnout and lead for the long haul. If you desire to impact more people, you'll need to learn to multiply your time and your energy. You only have so much time, but you can learn to utilize your energy to your advantage. When we understand how to invest our energy in the right places, combustion happens, transformation unfolds, and fulfillment skyrockets. Minutes of doing the best things can trump days or weeks of doing good things. 10 minutes of looking my kids in their eyes, hearing about their day is far better than 5 hours being next to them in the room on my laptop. 10 minutes in the morning, mapping out my day in my right side up journal gives me a plan to follow for the next 12 hours. An hour of creating the right plan can diffuse a quarter of misalignment on the team. When we move from spending to investing, we make a fundamental shift. Spenders work for money, but investors make their money work for them. Investing energy works the same way. The leaders who invest their energy know when and where their energy brings the best returns. This is why I love leading the 6 types of working genius trainings with teams. This tool helps leaders and teams understand the best areas to invest their energy for great returns. Other tools like the Berkman method and Clifton Strengths can be helpful as well. Financial investors focus on ROI, return on investment, but leaders must focus on ROE, return on energy. Content creation and tool development have a high ROE for me. I invested precious energy into writing this book, and people across the world can be nourished by it for a fraction of the cost of coaching. My team and I invest energy in developing tools that help leaders long after their coaching journey is finished. Some leaders focus their best energy on inspiring teams through delivering keynotes, others focus on leading incredible executive meetings, and others on recruiting and developing young talent. Clarifying your ROE can help you multiply your energy for years to come. The most effective leaders develop rhythms to invest regularly in their growth, their family, and their replenishment. They work with the grain of their gifting, not against it. Our team at Stay Forth developed a tool called the Annual Energy Map that helps leaders look proactively at what's coming. This tool allows leaders across industries to evaluate personal, family, and work needs ahead of time. This tool can also help you prepare your mind, heart, schedule, team, and family for the realities that are on the way. During the coaching session, a leader may acknowledge that they are in a challenging 2-month sprint, but they can visually see the light at the end of the tunnel. This has become a great tool to unifying marriages and teams around the unique needs of a season. You can find this tool by going to stayforth.com. Reflect on this shift. How could the shift from managing my time to investing my energy be freeing? What 3 activities give me the highest ROE, return on energy?